here's the thing with it. I mean, it's like very antiquated laws that are described like with home distilling that like go all the way back to prohibition. It really shouldn't be something that you can't do. It is like a completely safe and normal hobby if you know what you're doing. Um,
Hmm.
but that's not what your podcast is about. I'm just I'm really mad that all these years I basically I first of all there's a lot of confusing stuff. So first I didn't even know what I was doing was illegal, but then I found out. Um, but I mean now I'm completely legit. So I have this space and so when I was doing it, I was just doing it because I love it. For me it's basically a form of cooking. I'm producing spirits and making something for people to enjoy. And so it's very, I'm very active on like the flavor and everything and trying to maintain and control it. And then, one day my mom caught me and, she was just like, it's really weird. Your grandfather used to do this. Um, and so absolutely didn't get mad. And, the rest is history. I found out from her, that my grandfather was using peas and I was like, that's weird. I don't think anyone else in the world is doing that. After some, Googling, I couldn't find anything. And so, slowly the idea for 3BR started to get incepted to make this distillery around my grandfather at first, and then more and more I was like the time period itself is so interesting. So if you or your listeners want to take a look at pictures of our space, like we have like all these prohibition posters from that era. And then like the whole entire bar is graffitied. It's a 50-foot long graffitied bar that looks like the Berlin Wall.
That's
Kind of like
awesome.
a lot of cool stuff like that we just kind of leaned into that time period. Um, but it first started out with the pea based alcohol. But I'm such a weirdo. I just continued and kept making weird spirits. I figured, if one of our spirits is weird, slash two of them, slash three of them, I might as well continue. So I think I'm probably one of the only distilleries, in the country that, like probably like 8/10 of everything I've produced, doesn't fit into a category. And it actually is under distilled, specialty spirit. Distilled spirit specialty is the category that's kind of a catch-all for things that aren't whiskeys or rums or, agave spirits. Like most of my spirits, fall into that category. A lot of times it's also because no one's done that before. So a lot of my spirits, I'm the first one making them, as far as I can tell. And so it's not like it's a set category, and so it needs to fall into that distilled specialty spirit category.
I mean, that's
Um,
amazing that you're doing that. And
yeah.
so, I mean, go into some of those varietals y'all have because you guys have for sale 5 different varietals, but like you said, they're all completely different from each other. So go into that, please.
So we actually have way more than 5. Oh, so we've
On
been
your
open
website,
for
though.
almost
Sorry.
yeah. So on our website, those are for nationwide shipping. But
Nice.
we're
Okay.
working on adding more in that. But in terms of our actual distillery, we've been open for a little over 30 months, and I've produced at least that many different unique SKUs.
That's
And
amazing.
at any one point right now, I think let's see, if I count it quickly, at least 13 or 14 are currently available for sale. A lot of them I do are one-offs purely because of either the difficulty of making it or the cost. But I mean, if I talk about just like the ones that are even always available, even those are weird. So it starts off with the pea-based vodka, which
Mm.
we actually won Vodka of the Year internationally at Tales of the Cocktail with. Um,
Congratulations.
yeah, and then I did an agave spirit that agave spirit is normal, but what I didn't like is with the agave that we have here. I mean, you guys in Texas, maybe you can grow your own agave. Maybe someone is doing that down there. I'm not entirely sure because you guys kind of have the climate for it, depending on
Right.
what part. but for me up here in New Jersey, there's no way I can get agave, so I'm stuck with using agave nectar, which is, you know, basically like trying to make bourbon out of corn syrup. You're not going to get super high flavor and quality. And so I'm using the agave nectar entirely as the sugar source, and I'm basically discounting any flavor that it would give. And instead, I'm using two different types of hops, and I'm using some fresh orange peel during the actual brewing process. So I almost like treat it like a beer. I do a hot like hop addiction, and I also do a dry hop. And the hops themselves fill in a lot of that flavor that's missing. So it's vegetal, it's earthy, it's floral, all these different things. And a lot of times when you hear hops and spirits, it's typically not a good. It's typically not good because I mean I've heard countless times, like myself, like even when I was just like reading into and all that stuff, why people don't just typically distill beer is because the hops are just way too bitter, and it gets concentrated in the distilling process. I would argue that they just didn't, you know, do it well, because it is absolutely not bitter. It has like a really nice quality to it, and obviously the types of hops and the amount of hops and the way you add the hops really makes a difference. So other than that spirit, which it's called Sochny, there's our Soviet rum. That's actually made from sugarcane and prune juice. So I say Soviet rum. It's legally not rum, and I actually got into a fight with the TTB about this because technically it is not rum. It's made from not just sugar cane products, which would be, you know, sugar, molasses, or sugar cane juice, anything like that. Instead, it's made from the prune juice and sugar cane juice together. And the reason why it's done that way is because in the Soviet Union in the 1960s, they had their close relationship with Cuba, and so they got to actually taste, you know, this amazing Cuban rum that was being made. But if you just think about the logistics of trying to get back alcohol from Cuba to the Soviet Union, is absolutely not easy, especially during, you know, these times where, you know, it was hard to even approach Cuba, because the United States and the Soviet Union had such a, you know, harsher relationship at the height of the Cold War. So they tried it, and they were like, why can't we try to make our own Cuban rum? And so they didn't have molasses, so they used the prune juice basically to give all of the extra flavors of like that come in a molasses, because molasses is basically just it's waste, like it's a bunch of like, you know, burnt sugar, you know, fibers and everything like that, and that's why it's black like that. And so they're using the prune juice in a similar way, because prune juice is also like very fibrous, very dark in terms of flavor. And so I've read about this, and I was like, I need to try to recreate this, because this project isn't even like around. It only lasted for a couple of years, because at some point they realized that this is still really expensive to make, and the people in the Soviet Union were, you know, just buying vodka because it was the cheapest. And so I'm making it. It's actually one of my favorite spirits. We call it, the name of it's Havana, but it's spelled in Cyrillic, so it looks like Zabaha, because it's Xavaha. But if you read that in Cyrillic, it's Havana. And then let's see, I have even my gin technically is it's a distilled specialty spirit, because actually not because of any particular you know, ingredient in it, but I knew that I was already making all these weird things. So I decided to make a really weird gin. So I leaned really heavily into savory. So it's garlic, chives, porcini mushrooms, dill, thyme, eucalyptus, and blackcurrant, along with the juniper and some coriander. So it pretty much almost tastes like soup. Like it's just so savory, so delicious. And that basically kind of made me, for cautious reasons, add a color to it. So I dye it like a slight off clear color, just so that it wouldn't be used accidentally for, a sweet, like, citrusy drink, because where it
Um,
really shines, things like, Bloody Marys, dirty martinis, it actually makes some really fantastic, savory variants on cocktails. So we do a savory gin fizz with beets and topped with chopped masala. So it's like you basically get this like super umami, heavy like egg white, cocktail. Things like that, like it, and once or twice a year we also do like a food as cocktails event where we make cocktails that taste like food. And
oh,
and that entire event is almost entirely fueled by this gin, because this gin, just works as like a savory element in itself. Like we've done like a spicy chicken tzatziki cocktail for one of them, ceviche, and like all these like things. Like we basically did a 6-course meal, but as cocktails. So it was a really, really cool thing. And this year for Thanksgiving, we did 14 courses. And it was
good
like,
lord.
obviously the turkey, but then all of like, green bean casserole and stuffing and, cranberry sauce. Like we did cocktails basically to exemplify every single part of, Thanksgiving. So that's, that's a separate plug for how amazing our cocktail program is, that we have here. But yeah, continuing, and then like with our main product line, the last one that is in the main 6 is a aged pea spirit. This is actually my absolute favorite. This is the one that I drink, like, whenever I want to take a drink. I find it's just like it is basically like a whiskey meets um a grappa meets like a mezcal. Like there's so much flavor in peas that it comes through. It's chocolatey, tobacco-y. There's almost a coffee note to it. There's all these different like things, and honestly, the reaction I get when people try it typically is that like it blows their mind, because I don't think I've ever had a spirit quite as flavorful as this, and it's called Gorovka. This is actually the closest thing to what my grandfather was making, because vodka is actually like almost impossible to make on like a home distilling aspect, because you need to distill it to 95%. So that like he was making more of like this pea moonshine, and that's kind of what I took as the main inspiration for this particular spirit. And in terms of taste, it's fairly close to what he was making. And then like after those main 6, after that I basically just went crazy. I was just because my grandfather was an elevator engineer for
Mm.
the Soviet Union. I basically decided to create a whole new line of spirits that were one-offs called my elevator spirits. And so I imagined this like infinitely tall building with like a lot of different floors, and every single floor is basically a separate material or a separate concept, or that kind of thing. So the first one I ever released was actually a maple syrup spirit. So it was 55 gallons of grade A maple syrup, and you can just imagine the cost of that. Fermented, distilled, and then aged like in like along with maple, like in a maple barrel, to basically pick up a little bit more. Um, that was absolutely like the first foray into this whole thing. And because it's like separate from our normal line, we decided to always get different artists we have a bear theme, so we have them do a bear and the material, and whatever inspiration, whatever they want to do is completely up to them. So this one was like this really cool punk bear in this like really interesting like art style that like was completely like this is one of my business partners, his brother. He lives in Chicago, and it's like this almost like Picasso-esque style to it, and it's really, really cool. And then the next one I did, Rutgers